All right guys, welcome to Road America. This is a very historic track and a lot of people think this is the premier track in North America. It is a 4.04 mile, 14 corner track. And if you do the math, that is a lot of straightaways. And that's kind of why I don't really like this track. Now, let's take a lap. All right, before we actually start going over the track, I do want to talk a little bit about Road America and the intense speed it has. It's not a very technical track. As you can see, most of these corners aren't really flowing with each other. It's just a corner straight. So many of the corners are very separated, which takes away a little bit of the technicality part of it. But this track being as fast as it is, it can be very nerve-wracking to drive and require a lot of very high-speed confidence. And when I say that, a lot of times it's hard to do something that maybe is simple at low speed, but when you multiply that speed times 3 or 4, it gets very challenging and very, very difficult to be smooth at 130 miles an hour. The littlest bit of movement at 130 miles an hour can make a very significant change. You turning that steering wheel 5 degrees at 20 miles an hour doesn't do that much, but doing it at 120 miles an hour will make a significant change. So being very smooth and calm at 150 miles an hour can be quite challenging. And that's what this track is all about. It is all about speed. Okay, Road America. We are going to run the Road America full track with the kink. In the video, you are going to see we are running the motorcycle loop. It was during the 2019 One Lap of America, and they chose to run the motorcycle loop just to keep things a little safe. But we're gonna do the kink, which is probably the most dangerous point on track, maybe in the US. Okay, coming down the front straight here, very long straight. This is about a 1 mile long straight, and you're already coming out of the last corner with some speed. So, as you probably figure out, you're traveling well into the triple digits. Some cars will be easily in the 150, 160 mile per hour range. Turn 1 is pretty quick. Coming up to it, it comes up very fast, and most will overbrake for turn 1. But you can take turn 1 quite fast, like in the 70, 80 mile an hour range for most cars, depending on grip level. Lots of curbing on the exit of 1 that you can use, but most cars will rattle apart. I have found that if you like to run all of these curbings around the track, you're probably gonna have some loose bolts and stuff's gonna fall off the car. So I try to keep the car off most of the curbing. So coming down through 2, this isn't even a corner, not sure why it has a number. Corner 3, pretty late brake, turn in, late apex, nothing too tricky there. Just trying to get that exit speed out of 3. Coming down another long straight. Turn 4 is really not much of a corner. Coming down into 5, hardest braking zone of the whole track. You're coming downhill, again, probably just as fast as you were going down the front straight here, but very hard on the brakes, tightest corner of the track, downhill. Don't overdo it there. You can hit the curbing a little bit on 5 on the apex, but on the outside of 5, again, very harsh curbs. Try to stay off those. Coming up 5 into 6, you're coming uphill here, very blind. You will be braking right before you crest that top of turn 6. If you brake too late, your cars are gonna get very light and you're gonna lose a lot of that grip and end up way out here. So start with braking a little earlier coming into 6, and then take 6. Pretty average corner there once you crest the top of the hill there. Coming out of 7 into 7, more of a kink. In most cars, unless you have a lot of power, you're just gonna be slightly lifting off throttle, turning in as smooth as you can, and then back on it down into 8. 8's slightly downhill, but your typical late brake, late apex coming out of 8. Again, curbing out on the outside of 8 gets rough. I'd recommend staying off there. Coming into 9, this is the carousel. You will typically, a couple lines you can come through the carousel with. I like to keep it tight and try to get your maximum speed at the limit of grip, of course, coming into 9 here, as tight as you can, and letting the car maybe drift out maybe a car length around mid carousel, and looking up track here at your actual apex point, there's some curbing there on the right there. So try to get everything you can to get that exit speed out of 10. And this is where you would typically, or we in the video will take the motorcycle loop. So it'll be just a hard brake there and try to make that little loop. But coming down into 11, the kink, most dangerous spot on the track, and this will vary greatly depending on how much power you have, but it's going to be a slight lift, maybe even a little brake. Hold your breath, get through 11, walls on both sides. Try not to look at those walls. Look ahead where you want the car to be, and then slowly get back on throttle. Down through 11A, again, not really a corner. This should be flat, no problem. Canada corner, very hard on the brakes. This is probably the second or third fastest point of the track, so you're going to be using a lot of brakes. And don't overshoot it. There's a lot of curbing on the outside of 12. So just get on your late brakes, turn it in, trying to get back on throttle without getting too far off track into some of those intense curbs. Get back over to the right as you start coming up the hill. 13's a little blind coming over the hill, so you have to start picking up some reference points from what you can see coming into 13. But you're gonna come up that hill, carrying speed and maybe needing to actually use some of this little track over here. I find that pretty helpful as you're coming up 13 to use some of this little access road. And then coming into 14, you're kind of braking as you're crossing the track back over to the left side here and doing everything you can to get that exit speed out of 14 to come back down the long straight. We are in a 2006 Honda S2000. This isn't your normal S2000. This is a supercharged K-Swap S2000 that Alex and I ran on One Lap of America last year. In this video, we are going to start from a dead stop. This is how One Lap works. It's a combination of 3 full flying laps, starting from a dead stop and doing all 3 laps. It's not your best lap of the 3. It is a combination of all of them. So I will say in this video, Alex is driving a little more on the conservative side, trying to keep the car on track because everything counts. And at this point in one lap, we probably still had 3-some thousand miles to travel yet. So not the most aggressive driving style. So yeah, let's take a lap. All right, so he is pulling up to the starting line. They just sent a few other cars out. They try to space the cars so you don't hit traffic here. So when the green flag drops, Alex is going to take off and drag race down the front straight. This would typically be your fastest braking point on the track with speeds usually in a car like this, 160 some miles an hour. But being the first lap, he doesn't have to brake too early. This is actually a pretty fast turn. You can hold some speed through here, come out, hit some of those rumble strips if you need to. Don't get too crazy. It is very bumpy out there. Coming in down into corner 3. Make sure you get the late apex there. Get the run out. These straights are long, so extracting all of the exit speed is very crucial. And this is actually probably one of the fastest points on the track because you're kind of coming downhill. It's definitely one of the hardest braking zones. So use those braking points as reference. Hard on the brakes, making your way back over to the right. It's a very tight corner. And a little overdoes it there. Coming up this blind hill. Brake right as he crests the top right before. Turn in and get back on it. Coming into 7 here is more of a kink. You might require a lift depending on how much power and grip you have. But right back on it. Coming down into 8. Pretty typical corner, your late apex. Use some of those rumble strips if you need, but they get pretty rough again. Now, coming into the long carousel. Few ways through here. You can kind of hang it in tight, let the car float out maybe mid-track, but then start tucking it back in. Getting on it. And we are doing the motorcycle loop here. So this is gonna be a little different. Usually you'll run the kink, but the motorcycle loop, hard brake. This is probably the slowest part of the track. Just a little chicane there to help slow things down before going through what would be normally the kink. Little safer track. Coming down through 11. They call this Thunder Alley. 12 is a hard braking. Don't overdo this one. Lots of walls if you miss this. So get that turn in just right. Use some of the rumbles, but again, don't get too far out. Your car will vibrate apart. Coming up over this blind, turn 13, touch that rumble strip and then use some of this access road if you need to keep the car on track. Braking down into 14, looking for that exit. Get on it. Down the 1.1 mile straight, up the hill. Your slow cars are actually going to stop accelerating coming up that hill. And there you go, we have a lap. But we're gonna go through turn 1 here, just to show you what turn 1 looks like at about 160 miles an hour. Hard brake. All right, the track scores for Road America. I know I'm gonna get probably flamed for this one, but fun factor, 3. Like I said, it's not the most fun track. Lots of straightaways. So unless you've got a 900 horsepower car or something with a lot of power, those straightaways can definitely get a little boring. I did a endurance race there once with a 1980 some BMW, maybe made 150 horse. You get bored after 2 hours going down those straights. Like you're literally looking all over the place and looking for something, to happen, someone to trip that's walking over the bridge or something. It's a very boring track. So score of 3. The risk factor, this very risky track, and for only being a score of 3 for fun, very high risk. So 9 out of 10 for risk, just because this is a fast track. With being a 4-mile track, lap times averaging between 2.5 to 3 minutes, your average speeds are definitely near triple digits. And there's definitely corners where you can hit some concrete walls that are probably life-threatening. So very high risk. Technicality, this track has some technical corners. I'm gonna give it a 6 out of 10. Some blind stuff in there. Again, being high speed, you really need to know how to get the car set up just right to take advantage of those high speed corners. So 6 out of 10. My personal score of Road America, and I am ready to take all the hate for this score, but I give it a 4 out of 10. In the comments below, tell me why you think it should be better than a 4 out of 10. All right, that's it for Road America. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and keep it on track.